You're listening to Facts and Fictions, and surprise, today's a bonus episode. This one's audio only, and we're dropping it a little early because we just couldn't wait to share. Let's get into it.
Welcome back to Facts and Fictions, the Cozy Book Club podcast where we talk about the books we're reading and the thoughts we have on them. My name's Morgan.
My name's Desiree, and this week we're talking about The Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins. I haven't dipped into the self-help category in quite a while, but lately my feeds have been flooded with people talking about this book, and Mel herself, who's been doing a ton of interviews. I was curious to see what all the buzz was about and whether the theory actually holds up beyond the soundbite.
It's crazy. When you suggested it to me, I had not heard a single thing about it. And then starting the next day, it's the only thing on my For You page. How did that happen? Because you told me it was everywhere. And I'm like, is it? Like, I haven't seen anything. And then ever since then, it's been everywhere.
We were being listened to.
I guess.
So this book is written by Mel Robbins, and she got her start in the self-help category after she was in a really bad place financially and started doing public speaking. So that's kind of how she started, and then she started writing books. So she's very out there. She's constantly on podcasts. She's constantly doing speaking engagements. She was on Oprah's
That's so cool.
podcast recently for the Let Them book. And so she has this Let Them theory that this book is based on. And it's kind of funny because the idea, she explains it in the book, but the idea came from an instance where it was her son's prom. And she realized when they were taking photos that her son and his friends did not have a reservation for dinner anywhere. And she freaked out and started panicking and trying to find somewhere that would take this large group of kids when they just wanted to go get a casual dinner. And her daughter said, just let them. That's what they want to do. Just let them. And so that's where the idea came from, she says. So their book, the theory is really about relationships and how you should allow them to affect you or not, and how to take back the power for yourself, essentially.
I liked in the book how she had all those little anecdotes. It didn't necessarily feel like she was just trying to preach to you, but she had little stories of how it applied to her own life. I feel like sometimes when I'm reading the books that have like the life advice, it feels like it's not relatable because they're not giving you that context of how they've experienced those ideas.
She's very forthcoming, I will say, with her personal life. And I think that's probably why she's resonated with the amount of people she has.
Very vulnerable. And I think a lot of people, especially modern day, are like taking a step back from that vulnerability online. I think a lot of people are really starting to value their privacy. But if you are trying to create that platform and the following, you got to put yourself out there a little bit. And she does a really great job of doing that.
Definitely. So her theory is let them, but then she also, throughout the book, goes into let me. I thought the theory in itself, it's good. I will say, to start off with, I do think that the book itself, it's not revolutionary.
Yeah.
It's really not, but she is open with her personal life and does a good job of allowing it to be relatable. I honestly enjoyed the book. There were actually a few different passages that I really enjoyed. Although, on the other hand, I did skip through a couple sections. I didn't feel like they applied to me, but I think this type of book is one that it's common probably for people to do that.
I think so. You take what applies to you and leave what doesn't. With what you were saying about it not necessarily being revolutionary, the whole time I was thinking about it or reading it, I was thinking about how helpful it would have been for me to have read 8 years ago. Where it's like, I think the first time you're going through something really, really hard, that's the book you should be reading. But if you've already gotten through it, you probably learned a lot of those concepts on your own. But it is nice to get the reminder and the refreshment on it.
Absolutely. I think this book is great for someone who's young and someone who is being weighed down by the feeling of having to do everything for everyone else. I think this would be a great one to read for someone who's dealing with that and someone who feels like they don't have any time for themselves because they're constantly doing everything for everyone else.
That's something I felt very burdened by. I feel like my entire life, I felt like everybody's happiness, emotions, the sanctity of the home was reliant on me as a little peacekeeper. And that as I grew up, and I felt that way with friendships, with the early relationships I was in, and learning that that didn't have to be something I did was like, I am such a happier, lighter, freer person than I was like in my teens and 20s.
And it obviously wasn't because of this book, because you just read it, but was there something, what changed that in you? Was there
therapy and basically learning that idea, like you can't control other people, and trying to control other people is not going to get you anywhere except you're going to be disappointed in yourself time and time and time again because you're putting their actions on you and you can't do that. So I've talked to you about this. I don't think I ever have on the podcast, but my therapist, the thing that she gave me that was basically the same idea, it was called the circle of control. And it's like a bullseye. So in the middle, there's you, and then the things you can control, the things you can influence. So that is the people in your life. You can have influence over them, and the things you can't control at all. Focusing on the things you can't control and even the things you can influence. That was what was ruining my life. Now, just focusing on the things I can control, I am like, it's so much more peace. And I feel like that's kind of the idea of this book as a whole. A lot of the things she was saying was like, oh, Lisa would have said that. Lisa's my therapist.
Definitely. It's funny that you say that it reminds you of therapy because we'll get into this later, but there's a controversy going on regarding this book and potential plagiarism. And I've watched a few videos on it, and we'll discuss at the end of the episode. But one of the videos was discussing how this book specifically, and also many self-help books, everything is taken from therapy.
Mm-hmm.
All of the ideas and theories are taken from proven therapy ideologies and regurgitated by these people writing.
Self-help books are good because they create that level of accessibility, especially we're in America where therapy is not available readily to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So with my insurance, it was 12 sessions a year. And after that, it was $50 a session. And so I'd go twice a month. And so it ended up getting expensive pretty quickly. And I know having 12 sessions a year, that's a very generous thing with insurance. Some people get 0. And in that case, I feel like a book like this is the next best thing.
Absolutely. That's a good point. Very accessible.
But I do get where it's like you can't just take the ideas that people go to college for and like their degrees and spend their life devoted to and be like, oh, I'm going to put it in a little book. It could feel like a little undermining, especially depending on the way things are getting credited.
And I also think if you have the opportunity to do therapy, it's just the fact that that person has the knowledge. You can give them the information of what's going on in your life, and they can really match that to things that are truly going to help you, because there are so many self-help books that you read it and it might not be the best thing for you to do in that moment. Or so
the therapist has the expertise to tell you exactly what you need to hear in that moment. Whereas a book, you're just scanning, hoping something clicks.
Or reading a book is something that actually would hurt you in your specific situation without realizing.
I was also thinking that about this let them theory. I feel like at a certain point in my life, maybe my late teens, it would have been detrimental because I wasn't ready to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
I needed to feel like I had a little bit of control over things, even if I didn't actually. So that is a good point where you might be finding something that's not for you.
Exactly.
And the tricky little balance to strike.
There were a couple passages in this book that I thought are really good for anyone to hear. Specifically, there was this story that Mel tells about, and or it's not really a story, I guess, fictional, but she talks about someone who has a busy weekend coming up. And is it okay if I just read it really quick? It's just short, but it really resonated with me because this is something that I think tons of people find themselves in this situation where they are trying to do their best and people don't know what's going on with you and making assumptions, and you really can't care. So I'll just read it very quickly. It's not super long, but here it is. Let's say you have a crazy busy weekend coming up. On one hand, you have a close friend celebrating a big milestone birthday, and it's one of those really fun weekends where friends are all getting together to celebrate. For you, it means making a 4-hour drive to get to where the party is going to be held. And you know that the right decision for you is to be there. On the other hand, you promised your parents that you would come home the same weekend because your grandparents are visiting. You want to do both. You want to be a good friend, and you want to be a good child, and you want to be a good grandkid. So you move heaven and earth to drive 4 hours north of the city to be present for the Friday night festivities for your friend. And you're glad you did. You stay up late laughing with friends and down a bottle of wine. You have an absolute blast. Then the next morning you wake up at 7 a.m., you roll out of bed, pull on your sweats, leave a note saying you're sorry to miss out on the rest of the weekend, and get back in the car to drive another 4 hours to your parents' house to spend the rest of the weekend with your grandparents. As you're driving on the road, you're proud of yourself for making the effort. Little do you know, you'll find out later, the birthday girl was upset that you left and apparently said, I don't know why she even bothered coming if she could only stay one night. And see, that's the thing, is you cannot take that to heart.
Mm-hmm.
And that person probably does not mean anything by it. That was their feeling, but they didn't know that you went out of your way to do that. So you have to make the decisions for yourself, and you can't let that person's hurt feelings make you feel bad, because you did what you wanted to do and you did your best to be there for your friend.
And there's something I've learned the more like the older I get. It's something my grandma used to always tell me when I was little, that there are some people who are, she would call them leeches. They're going to look for the worst in every action and every person. and they're going to try to leech that happiness from you. And I feel like that's an example of it. Instead of her friend, that's so great of you to make this work and come support me on my birthday weekend. Instead, she's going to be a leech and be like, oh, why can't you stay the entire weekend? You shouldn't even come. And like as a kid, I didn't really believe in that concept. But the older I get, the more people I meet where I'm like, oh, you are somebody who's looking for the negative. And you just have to, again, let them. It doesn't affect you if you don't let it.
And also, you have to, if it becomes a problem to where they are continuously doing that, and it comes to a point where you are constantly feeling like they are taking the worst of you and projecting it, you need to make a decision and realize that this relationship, it might not be worth it.
Definitely.
So I don't know. I thought that was kind of a powerful story, personally.
That makes my stomach drop when I read it. She's saying about all this effort she went through. It's just sad. Like, I feel like so everyone can relate. You've gone through the effort and it's not
Yes.
appreciated, or even worse, it's twisted into something, makes you in the wrong.
Definitely.
Yeah. I have a friend like that.
Yeah.
I feel like I spent my early 20s sad about my small circle, and like I just love it now. It's like everyone in my life is so great because I just dropped the ones would say things like that or do things like that.
And I think that it's important to know that might not be how that person always is, but you can't wait around and push your feelings to the side, waiting for them to change and not act that way. Maybe they'll change for the better and their mindset will change and you can be friends later in life, but it is not a negative thing for you to set boundaries. And I think people should remember that.
I love boundaries. I used to thought that was the cringiest term. I remember the first time my therapist talked to me about boundaries. Oh my gosh, like no, now they're the best. I fully embraced them. The difference a few years can make.
The more boundaries, the better.
It just creates so much peace in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something I value so much now. And I never really thought I was going to have, but like my life is so peaceful now.
Peace over everything. And that also kind of reminded me of the saying. Have you ever heard the saying that people come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime? I love that saying.
And it is nice to look back on people who've come and gone. I learned this, or I grew in this way.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I can say that for almost every relationship I've had that's come and gone.
Agreed.
There's some where it's still a question mark, but I feel like that's something I just need more reflection on.
There was another part of the book that I found relatable / interesting, was the story about how she lived in a neighborhood with a few other friends and they hung out all the time and they were tight knit. And then she had another friend move close as well. And all of a sudden, she was on the outside looking in, and this friend that had just moved to the neighborhood was now hanging out with her other friends without her. And how she felt upset and angry, but then realized it has nothing to do with me. I need to just let them, because in reality, it didn't have anything to do with her. They were closer in proximity. They had things in common, and they lived close enough where they saw each other and said, "Hey, you want to come over for dinner tonight?" And it was that. It had nothing to do with, let's exclude Mel. And I think we've all experienced that sort of situation where you're in a group of friends and you're not invited to something that everyone else is and no one notifies you, and then you see it on social media. And I think that does result in hurt feelings. But again, let them, because if you weren't invited, then would you have had that much fun?
Yeah,
if you were?
exactly.
And so I don't know. I think everyone should just keep in mind that it's best to be in rooms where you're wanted and to not feel so bad if you're not invited somewhere.
And that made me think, when I was in high school, I was the person who accidentally, there were a few scenarios where I was the one accidentally, I didn't even think about it, excluding. So I had my circle of friends. You're saying with like the proximity. See, there were 3 of us houses. Our parents all lived really close to each other. And so sometimes it's just spontaneously, in the snap of a finger, there's a hangout happening. And then if it ended up on Snapchat or something, then, oh shoot, maybe we should pull this person, we were doing this. But it happened from in a span of 10 minutes. It was planned and now we're together. And so just the inconvenience of having to tell people, hey, if you want to drive 15 minutes out this way, we're doing it. So we just wouldn't. And then I was like, oh, am I like the villain? And I don't think I was. But as a child, I felt like I was when I was getting a Snapchat message, hey, why wasn't I invited? It was a planned thing. It's just something that happened. And so, but it did make me more cognizant of that. If you're doing things with people, does everything need to go online? With the first one, that's a lesson I learned very early on. That can make people feel bad sometimes. And 2, just extend the invitation, and if they take it or not, that's up to them, but at least it was put out into the world.
And I think being upfront with people too, if that were to happen and it comes up, just be honest, and that's fine.
I felt very bad about it as a kid, and now I'm looking back on it. It wasn't that big of a deal, but it felt like it at the time. Like,
You don't want to feel like you're excluding anyone, especially if they work close in proximity that they would have been invited. Especially in adulthood, don't feel bad about it. Don't feel bad about it.
everyone's so busy and have so many things going on. That's another thing I've learned. People aren't thinking about you as much as you think
No.
they are. That's not a mean thing to say, oh, they don't even care, but they don't, because they've got a million other things on their mind.
Mm-hmm.
And they still probably love you and adore you and appreciate your friendship, but you're just not going to be on that forefront of everyone's mind. That's a good thing.
Yes, that is absolutely a good thing. And also, some people, like me, for example, I much prefer to spend time one-on-one with people.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been that way. I'm not really sure what that's all about. That's just how I am. That's just a preference that I've really always had.
I'm the same way. And I think a lot of that stemmed from early anxiety I had, where it's not wanting, because I often felt like somebody who was not included in group settings. So it's like, am I ever making anyone feel this way in group settings? Like, as a kid, I always felt like the awkward third, fourth, fifth wheel, however many people there were. Group settings. As an adult, I am hyper focused on trying to make sure nobody feels that way. And then I feel like I end up just being awkward in the group.
Oh my gosh, same. It's almost like we have the same personality type.
I love how well we are.
Any other parts that stuck out to you?
Something that could be like controversial to bring up. I don't know if you caught where she was talking about things like that her kids bother her about her kids, and they said what bothered them about her. And one thing she said she assumed bothered everyone was how much of their lives she put online. And that I don't love. I hate when put other people's lives online. You can put as much as you want of yourself on there, but when it comes to involving your spouse or your kids, if it's bothering them, don't do it. When I read that, I did not like that.
I completely agree with your take. And also, I actually found that entire section where she really went into her children and expectations she has for them very toxic.
That rubbed me the wrong way.
I did not love her perspective on that.
Just we were talking about how she doesn't have the boundaries online that a lot of creators do. That's great for yourself, but if you're aware that your family doesn't like what you're sharing, I think you need to put the family above everything else. And I think a lot of creators online definitely lose that. And so that just made me a little uncomfy. I'm somebody, I've put my life online since I was 18 with my blog, and now I'm on TikTok. And a lot of people on TikTok do not know I'm married because my husband doesn't like to be online. And that's something I respect. I could put a camera in his face all the time, but that would be so mean. So every now and then I'll mention in a video, oh, my husband said this. And people are like, wait, you have a husband? I do. And that's the way he prefers it. And I prefer keeping him comfortable and happy. I don't like when people, you can tell they're crossing the boundaries, or if somebody on TikTok's recording someone and you're like, oh, they don't want to be on video right now. You can just tell.
Oh my gosh. Can we talk about that for a second? That reminds me of the epidemic of fake, cringy videos by couples. Oh my gosh.
It is painful.
I block all of them.
I know. And you can tell it's just so scripted. And this is toxic of me, and maybe isn't true, but I always feel like they're not actually happy. If you're doing all of this, pretending to be so happy, so in love, we have all these cute moments. What's real and what isn't at that point? I feel like it'd be so hard to create that boundary of I'm doing this because I love you versus I'm doing this because it's going to get us views.
Definitely makes you question.
Yeah, I can't. And there are some that I started out enjoying when they're small, and then they blow up and all of a sudden nothing's authentic anymore. You can just tell how many takes did you do to get this perfect surprised face.
And I feel like sometimes you can even detect resentment from one or both of the parties.
Did you watch, this was early TikTok, Cat Stickler? Yes, I remember.
That's one of the first ones I feel like.
And that's the example where you could see at the beginning, I do think they were cute and happy. And then it was the last few months before they announced they're separated. It was so awkward to watch because you felt like, oh, they hate each other. They are not happy, but they were pretending to be. But I don't think many people are good at pretending to be in love if they aren't.
Yeah, gosh.
And I remember everyone was so shocked when they dropped the divorce video. And then a lot of us weren't. So the writing was on the walls last few months.
That was a whirlwind.
Sometimes I miss early day TikTok. It was so chaotic and fun.
It was. There's another couple that really grinds my gears. I won't even say their name on here, but you know who I'm talking about.
Wait, do I? I said we could dive into them. Everyone knows who she was talking about. Whatever couple came to your head, yes, that's the one. They all had.
Gosh, there's something they need to go to therapy.
And I've got them blocked, but I still get so much of their content from people talking about them.
Well, there's spin-off accounts that promote their episodes and stuff, and it's like you cannot escape them. I block every single one.
And I get it's so addicting getting all the views, all the money, but I like at what expense? Because a lot of people are like, at this point, what they're doing is rage bait.
Mhm.
The rage bait to make everybody turn against you. Nobody enjoys you or your content or your marriage. Money only gets you so far.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Gosh. Right. Oh, I guess one other part of the book that I did actually really enjoy was the portion where Mel talks about building deep connections in a new place. I did really enjoy that. I think that she talks about how you have to get out there in person and be the one to take the first step and practice vulnerability. And that is really the only true way to build real connections when you're in a new area or a new place. I think it was a good reminder to get outside. And I do think that while we are both very much homebodies and introverted, I do really appreciate real relationships with people and in our community. So that was just a good reminder. And I think it would be a good passage for anyone to read who maybe has moved to a new place and is feeling lonely. Don't be scared to go to a coffee shop and start talking to a stranger.
I've got a little tangent off of that. It's going to all circle back. That reminded me, though, of college, how hard it was for me to make friends. Like, I'd always put myself out there and I felt like I got shut down. But then, coming to circling, have you ever seen videos on rejection therapy?
Where you juice the fear.
Yeah.
fearful
I
thing.
always think I need to do that because I'm afraid to like talk to people like in public now because of like my
Because of your
experiences in
experience.
college. And I see those videos, but I'm like, I also don't want to go through that. But I do think it would help me.
I think it probably would, but
It is scary and I don't like doing scary things. I like staying in my comfort zone, but I also do want to like make connections with people. But I just get so anxious. I've seen people out and about where I'm like, oh, they've got like a cool vibe. I probably would go along with them. But do I do anything about it? No. Because I don't want them to think I'm weird or awkward or just shut me down. And if they did, so what? It wouldn't be the end of the world. But for a moment, I would feel embarrassed and uncomfortable, and I want to avoid that. So, like, those rejection therapy videos are always so interesting to me.
it's a whole other type of fear to speak to someone out in public who you have no clue, what they are besides what you see in front of you.
And then it's like, what if they think you're like an Arbonne person? Is that what that company is? No,
Yeah.
what's the one?
Are you talking about the hair?
No, there's this lady in here where we live in the Quad Cities. Her name's Brooke, and she goes around the stores. Have you ever gotten talked to?
Oh,
Yes.
but I don't know what
It's not Arbonne. It's a different MLM. But she is so nice to you and acts like she wants to be your friend, and then it turns into a pitch.
Did you get sucked in?
Yeah, she complimented me on I was wearing a really pretty sweater. I was in Target. And then she came up and then she's like, oh, and then it started like, oh, where do you go to church? And I was like, I don't. And she's like, oh, and then trying to get me in her social circles and her church circles. And it hurt my feelings. But now I feel like a lot of people, if they've ever gotten targeted that way, they're going to think if you approach them in public, you're just one of those.
I will say that that's me because I've been approached by, I don't know if it was Brooke, but been approached by people at like a TJ Maxx, and I'm kind of rude to them. I feel like I can pick up right away that they have bad intentions,
Yeah.
and I can be a bit rude, but whatever.
On What's Going On Quad Cities Facebook page, there's posts about this Brooke. Because it's like people will post on Facebook, oh, I met the nicest girl, and saying it's so great to create these connections. And then people comment like, her name wasn't Brooke, was it? And then yes, run.
Oh no. Oh geez.
I got caught. And I fell for it. I was like, she is so nice and so warm and so friendly.
Well, at least you didn't get truly got. You didn't go down the rabbit hole where you're hanging out with her.
And that's because I was there with my husband.
Oh.
That's not all the social interactions.
He's like, let's go.
Yanking on my arm. True connection with this girl.
That's funny. Be careful. Everyone should be careful with strangers. It is kind of a scary world because we're so used to either having, by the time we actually meet someone, typically we have some idea of them as a person, whether that be by word of mouth or a quick search of their social media. So to walk up to somebody that you gives off a vibe that you might like, it could go very badly, very quickly. But sorry, not trying to be negative. Just be careful.
It just makes me so nervous. There are people from here who I've followed on Instagram for 10 years. I've never met them in real life. I thought we'd be friends.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, how do you go about that? I'm not going to. I'll just keep liking their Instagram posts.
No, you should reach out to them.
No, I don't really want to. I've got you. That's enough.
Oh, one last thing for me. There was in the book, Mel talked about her 5 why theory. And when you're talking to someone about something that is going on or they're upset about, asking why 5 times and pressing them on what they're talking about. So why do you feel that way? Oh, well, why are you afraid of that? Oh, why? And to get to the root of things, I actually found that really funny because that's the 5 whys is a tactic I use at work.
Really?
Not for things that people are upset about, but when someone needs something from me, I have to really press people on why do you need that? what do you need? Why? Because I have to drill down to really understand what I need to get them. So I just thought that was a funny crossover.
Oh, that's crazy.
So, yeah.
That's fun. When I was reading that, again, I keep saying the negative things. So I was like, I don't think I'd be good at applying that. I feel like people would feel like I was interrogating them.
I think it depends on how you approach it. If you're like, why? I think that's different than being like, oh, well, why do you feel like that? It's just like being a therapist.
I need to practice.
Go home tonight and talk to
Interrogate him.
He's stressed out. Just give him 5 why.
There we go.
Should we go into the controversy?
And she knows about the controversy. I purposely avoided it that way. Feel a little surprised for the pod.
So, not that we want to bring the controversy to the podcast, but I did, I guess, want to note it because I don't necessarily have strong feelings about it. I watched a few videos about it that came across my For You page. But essentially, there are accusations that Mel Robbins plagiarized the Let Them theory from a poem written by an author named Cassie Phillips. So personally, after watching a few of the videos explaining it, have to be honest, I don't feel super strongly either way. There's in the self-help category, I feel like there's just so many things that are regurgitated that it's hard to say that this Mel Robbins' entire book and premise is pulled from this one poem. But I can also see, why. So I did want to share the poem that Cassie wrote. We'll link to it. But what are your thoughts?
I don't love that she's trademarking the term. I think the one guy said it's all just watered down, trickled down. But trademarking it when you've already acknowledged you got it from somebody else, I think is a little bit
slimy. I can totally, I agree with that.
I think if she weren't doing that, I wouldn't have any qualms, but I do feel uncomfortable with the trademark. I feel like that's, and in my head, I'm like, her background is as a lawyer, so it was probably just instinct.
Mel Robbins' background?
Am I wrong about that?
Did I not know that?
Let me make sure I get that up. I'm pretty sure she was a lawyer and then stopped being a lawyer. Former lawyer. Yeah.
So interesting.
Her background is a lawyer. So maybe it's just an instinct to do that without really thinking about the ethics or morals. Because maybe even if it's legally okay to do, I don't think it's the moral thing to do. That's my 2 cents.
Valid. So we'll link to Cassie's poem and then I'll probably show it on the screen as well. But just wanted to note that kind of controversy around the book since we are discussing the book.
And again, everything's watered down to therapy. I would love to start seeing therapists shift more into the content creator roles. A lot of times when I am looking for a book like this, where it's more self-helpy, I tend to not go for influencer-y type authors. I'd rather have somebody who has the master's degree in it. I'd rather read something like this from somebody who's built their career around it. I know some people are the complete opposite. They want the relatability. They want a real person. That's not usually my jam. Usually I want somebody who has the credentials.
I agree. Especially if you're going to be taking advice from someone, if you have the option to get it from someone who has credentials, I think that's always best.
And we were saying the book makes the therapy ideas more accessible, but I would still rather a therapist be writing that book to create that accessibility for people who can't afford or don't have access to therapy, rather than, again, a social media personality, like a public speaker. I think she's really smart. She has really great ideas. That's like not to bash her. And some people are looking, again, for a non-professional because it feels more relatable to some people. But
she has the business mind to project herself and her words all over.
I'd love to see some therapists get more into that space. I feel like a lot of the self-help gurus you see online aren't credentialed. They're just really excellent marketers. It's interesting because what are people only believing them because they've packaged it in such a pretty, wrapped it with a bow. And look at, I'm an expert at this, but how are you an expert? Not to bash her. I'm not trying to be negative.
No, I don't think you're being negative at all.
Okay.
I think it's very important for us as people who are taking in information all the time to realize that the word expert just tells you nothing.
Yeah.
Expert, anyone can claim to be an expert on anything they want to.
I used to work at an online course platform, and we were literally telling people you just have to be one step ahead of the people you're teaching to call yourself an expert, which I never agreed with, but that was part of the philosophy. So I did marketing for them. So I'm typing it, crossing my fingers as I do it. Because it's like, I don't believe that. You need to have expertise. Being one step ahead is not enough. And I feel like that's like what a lot of these people are trying to do. Oh, I experienced this a year ago, and this is how I got through it. Even if that might not have been the best method to use, but because they experienced it, they think they're an expert on it. That's just a little side tangent, but I think the word expert is thrown around a little too loosely.
I agree. We need to take a step back from expert. Is there something below expert that we can start utilizing? I have knowledge in. I have experience in.
I get so uncomfortable. For my TikTok, I've talked to news sources and they'll write articles and this baby name expert. And I'm like, no, I'm a girl with a baby name hobby. Don't put that on me.
Well, let's not downplay it because you know a lot of stuff about baby names.
I know a lot about it, but I'm not an expert. I'm learning every day, and I'm just like,
experts still learn every day.
I know, but I don't like when they call me experts, and I've started telling them that too. I don't see myself as an expert. I see myself as an enthusiast, and I think there's a lot of.
I think that's a great description, enthusiast.
Because they'll be like, oh, you're a baby name expert, blah, blah, blah. Wait, let's backpedal a little bit.
I do think you're an expert, though. You are extremely familiar with so many baby names, the resources that to access baby names, where to get things. I think you are an expert.
You know what I want to do? I want to put a book out or something, get deeper into the research, do research myself on the roots rather than relying on other people's research. Maybe then I could start to think that way.
Well, I think that's great.
Right now, it's just like my special little interest. That's that. But expert makes me nervous.
I just don't want you taking our conversation and downplaying your knowledge.
Well, that's very nice. I feel like expert needs to be reserved for seldomly used. If everyone's an expert, nobody's an expert. And I feel like everybody's calling themselves an expert at this point.
Agreed. Any other thoughts?
I rated it, I think 4.
Oh, I don't know that I rated it on Storygraph yet. Let me do that. I would rate it, when thinking about self-help, I would say I pretty much enjoyed it. I would give it maybe a 3.75. I feel like I did skip through a few different sections / the parenting section did irritate me. So I'll give it a 3.75.
I think it would be great for somebody younger who hasn't done. I feel like we're both at a point in our lives, we've done so much self-work and like we've learned a lot of these lessons on our own, but it would have been really great to have somebody teach these lessons to us when we were younger. But I don't think maybe it's set up for people in their late 20s, 30s, beyond. I think it's great I would give this to one of my little cousins if they're going through it.
Agreed.
I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to our peers.
Agreed.
Unless it's a peer who hasn't like gone through much and like their first big time to struggle.
Yeah,
and
or the major people pleaser who is drowning in people pleasing.
So I think it was a good refresher, but it's not one I'm going to be shouting from the rooftops recommending to people.
Agreed. All right. Well, that is all for our discussion on the Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins.